You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk with Dr. Stacey Cordivano about developing self-compassion. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Grice, business consultant and former equine practice owner. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2026 by CareCredit. Dr. Stacey Cordivano is a graduate of Penn State University and the Virginia-Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine. She completed a one-year internship at B.W. Furlong and Associates in New Jersey and subsequently spent an intensive 6 months in Ocala, expanding her experience in the lameness field as an associate. Dr. Cordivano is the founder of Clay Creek Equine Veterinary Services in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where she lives with her husband, 2 sons, and a farm full of animals. Dr. Cordivano currently serves on the board of directors for the AAEP and has served on multiple AAEP committees. She created the Whole Veterinarian podcast and is also a part of the leadership team for Decade 1 and the Sustainability and Equine Practice Seminar Series, all of which serve the goal of helping equine veterinarians to thrive. Welcome, Dr. Cordivano. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thanks. Good to see you.
You know, it's amazing thinking about this topic because every time when I would have a sick foal in the middle of the night and it was awful or something bad happened, and then I would send it off to university, then I'd go home and I'd lay in my bed and go over all the things like, did I do that right? What if I did that wrong? Oh my God, you know? And anytime you had one that, I don't know, that died on you, like I always this thinking, what did I do wrong? How, it's a self-critical spiral, whether or not there's a mistake, but maybe there was a mistake or a difficult outcome. I think it's one of the least talked about and most difficult parts of veterinary practice that we just are so critical of ourselves. What effect does that have on people's mental health?
Oh my gosh, so much. I agree with you. I think it's really common, but it leads to the burnout issues we have. It leads to the compassion fatigue issues that we have. It leads to depression, higher depression scores. All the research shows that the more critical you are on yourself, the worse all those scores are. And it's very well documented. And I agree. It's also not very well talked about. It's sort of, not to blame anybody, but it's sort of how we're taught in vet school to be, right? Constantly checking what went wrong or what we could have done better or, scored better on. And so when I discovered the idea of, I actually discovered the idea of mindful self-compassion through some other mindfulness training that I was doing. And when I discovered it, I just thought, oh my gosh, every veterinarian could benefit from this because it's not hard to do and it's so necessary, and the research shows that it's so beneficial for anyone who works in a field like ours.
I tend to find that veterinarians are often perfectionists because, you're focused, laser focused on getting into veterinary school, and then you're laser focused on doing all this learning and being the best and not making mistakes. And how does that perfectionism where does that fit in here?
It's just tied in. It's all one thing, right? If we are shown and modeled by our higher ups or our mentors or the people around us that striving to be the absolute best is what's required to become a veterinarian or to be a good veterinarian or to be the best veterinarian, that's what we believe. It doesn't even have to be told to us. We just have to be looking around. And I think also by nature, if you're going to work hard enough to get into vet school, you're going to be someone that expects a lot of yourself. They go hand in hand. And I think also perfectionism is a little bit of a crutch that a lot of us use to delay or say, like, I'm not ready to do this yet because it's not quite perfect, or I can't, you know, send in this horse because I haven't done every single possible block on it yet. So I think perfectionism and self-criticism and the need for methods or strategies to combat that all are tied into one singular idea that we think we can control the outcomes of things. And the fact of the matter is we can't. And we have to be okay with accepting that.
Yeah, control is something that is very, very elusive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so you talked about self-compassion or mindful self-compassion. What exactly is it, and what does the research say about it?
Sure. So, mindful self compassion is made up of three ideas, and most of this work is still currently being researched by Dr. Kristen Neff out of Texas. So, it's made up of three things: self kindness, which is offering ourselves warmth and unconditional acceptance. Common humanity is the second thing. That's recognizing that all humans or all veterinarians are flawed and a work in progress continually. And then the third is that idea of mindfulness. So that is really just being open to the reality of the present moment. Ideally, it's done without judgment. I always find that that's the hardest part. So just kind of noticing how you're feeling, what you're thinking, that is mindfulness. And it takes some work, I think, especially for all of us that just go, go, go and tend not to sit and think for a moment. But those three aspects make up this idea of mindful self-compassion. And really, it shows, all the research shows that there is lower depression scores, less anxiety in people who are self-compassionate, less stress, less shame. And the studies will show you very correlated that people who practice self-compassion or mindful self-compassion have higher happiness scores, self-confidence, and life satisfaction scores. So that's all very well documented in research. And there are some like scientific things that go along with it, right? So self-compassion activates the mammalian caregiving system within our bodies. So within the amygdala and the threat defense system that we have for fight or flight, if we can activate the mammalian caregiving system, then that stops all that activation of our amygdala. So if you think, this is my best example, if you think of a cat purring in your lap and making biscuits, that is fundamentally the mammalian caregiving system, but you can do it to yourself. So like that's cats regulating themselves, I think. But for us as our own mammals, if we can find ways to comfort ourselves, whether like through physical touch, even if you're like giving yourself like a mini hug, or vocalizing like that purring, if there's something you can do that makes you feel more comfortable, all of that activates that caregiving syndrome. And just by talking to yourself or thinking in your head self-compassionately, that will also activate that system. So this is a scientifically proven way to actually care for your body, especially in the midst of a stressful moment.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by CareCredit. CareCredit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By helping to bridge the gap between cost and care, CareCredit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. Clients have a flexible way to pay over time for all types of care, and practices get paid in 2 business days. It's a payment experience everyone can feel good about.
Yeah, they talk about the importance of like all of the different senses. And I remember when I was caring for my dad, when he was in his final illness with cancer, one of my associates, or not associates, a partner at my practice gave me this lovely eye pillow, and it had velvet on one side and silk on the other, and it was filled with lavender. And so I'd just be so stressed out, and I would just 10 minutes lay that and sit still. And what a difference it would make when I was saying, oh my God, like I'm answering his questions wrong, and this is so hard to not be able to sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was really
Yeah,
hard.
you were
And it
practicing
was,
self-compassion in that moment.
yeah, yeah. And it is hard sometimes to do, to say, I'm going to take a minute. It
Mm-hmm.
would be easy for you to say you've got your tantruming 2.5 or 3 year old, to say, okay, we need to just take a moment, the two of us, and I'm going to hold you and rub your back,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's easy to do it for
It's easy
someone
to do
else.
for
It's
someone else. Yeah.
not always easy to do it for yourself.
Yeah,
So,
it feels selfish. It feels like
mhm,
you're being too easy on yourself. It feels like you're being lazy to lay down for 10
weak,
minutes with an eye pillow.
weak.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those, you know, counter arguments to self-compassion just aren't true. Like all the other things are proven that if in fact you give yourself self-compassion and take some time to pause, you end up being more productive in the long run. You end up having a more clear thinking process if you've taken a 10-minute break. All those things are proven wrong, but it's not in our nature for sure.
Right. I mean, one of the things that's always helped me is, like, if I'm being really hard on myself, I have learned to tell myself, well, if this was your best friend, what would you say to them?
Mm-hmm. That's like the number one strategy that's taught for self-compassion, Amy. Good job.
Well, cool. That's good. So, say one of our listeners was caught in a doom loop after, like, a hard situation, a poor outcome in a case. What would be a sort of a step by step? What should they do? What's your
Yeah,
advice?
there are lots of strategies out there, lots. I think a couple of super easy ones are exactly what you just said, to literally name yourself and say, "Hey, Stacey," and talk like you would talk to a friend. That is really, I wasn't joking when I said that's like the most commonly prescribed way to do it, because like we just talked about, it's much easier to do for someone else than to yourself. But you just have to take yourself out of that situation and kind of give yourself, I want to say a pep talk, because that feels normal to us, but a pep talk in a very kind way. Hey, Stacey, this happens to everybody. I find myself doing this when I'm late. Like, I don't like being late. And I'll be at a stoplight, and like the fourth red stoplight, and I'll go, "Hey, Stacey, everybody's stuck in traffic and everybody's late sometimes. So it's not the end of the world."
You're not pounding your steering wheel, shouting,
the other strategy I like really well is to have a mantra. So this takes a little bit of work ahead of time, right? But whatever feels right to you. So I have come up with one that is probably, it's not my own, but it's, Stacey, you did the best you could in that moment with what you had at that time. And so if there's something that you can work on that resonates with you to help you, and have that posted on like the front of your truck or on your mirror in the morning, just so you get used to remembering it, have that in your literal back pocket to say to yourself when you start that rumination cycle. The other thing that's potentially easy and may work better for someone is to have actually something in your pocket. So they say to have a charm or a rock or something that feels nice, that if you are stressed, you can reach into your pocket and rub. And that's just kind of a grounding reminder for some people that are a little bit more tactile, that, I'm here, I'm present in this moment, I'm doing the best that I can. So those are 3 super basic ones, but I do think they work, and they're easy to pull out in the moment, and people don't even know that you're practicing self-compassion at that moment. Like a client is yelling at you for something, you can be rubbing your hand in your pocket to calm yourself down. Another one, like I mentioned, like a self-hug, or just butterfly, like they call it butterfly taps, where you take your fingers and go on your collarbone, rubbing your own arms across, or even just taking a deep breath with your hand on your stomach to feel like your hand and abdomen moving. all of those things just work to take you out of the cycle and back to the idea that like, this happens to everybody. I can handle this. I've handled this in the past. Everyone at some point in their career, if it's work related, has to deal with this. All those things just to bring you back, take a second, and that just helps that to stop that cycle. And once you can stop the cycle, you can get a little more perspective on it. I think that's all it's doing.
Yeah, I'm sure that some of the breathing techniques are probably helpful.
Totally.
Like I usually use them like if I'm feeling anxious about something, and I'll breathe through my nose long and slow and go around, do box breathing or whatever.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways to help yourself regulate when you're, whatever the reason that you're getting dysregulated.
Right. And I think if you just to like take it out of yourself again, and like it's easier to not care for yourself, but like if you take 30 seconds to regulate yourself, everyone around you is going to be more regulated, or at least respond to your regulation, right? Like we do this inherently with horses. We can't be wired and holding our breath and nervous around a horse. We don't. We all stop. We all take a deep breath, whether we're like blowing in their nostrils or breathing with them. We know that about horses. They read our energy. And so even if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the people around you or the animals around you, because it's going to help everybody. But mostly we want it to be helping you.
That's very true. And I think about how hard it was when I had small children that could easily dysregulate. Like you've been at work and you come home and they're just like come flying down the hall and they're loud and they want you and they need you, and yet it's a lot.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. And they're hungry and you have to make dinner and it but everybody would be better if
I got into mindfulness because I basically couldn't handle my kids. Like I was like, I'm yelling at my kids too much. I got to find a strategy. That's actually why I discovered any sort of mindfulness whatsoever. And then I kind of found mindful self-compassion and found it even more applicable to my life. But yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. There's so many places to use it. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I'd say if this resonates at all with you, check out selfcompassion.org, mindfulselfcompassion.org, or Kristen Neff's research. She has 2 great books. One is just called Self-Compassion. The other one's called Fierce Self-Compassion. She's on a ton of podcasts. She has a lot of free audio and articles on her website. So if you can dive into this more and find a strategy that really resonates with you, like I said, there's so many, and I think it's very individual what lands with each specific person. But, I guess my parting hope is that you take a few minutes to take care of yourself, because that's what's going to make this career doable for the long term. So hope you check it out.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Cordivano, for being with us today. This is such a topic that is important for everybody in veterinary medicine. Actually, everybody in the world. Everybody should listen. And so this has been really wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to all our listeners for joining us for the Business of Practice podcast. And a big thank you to our sponsor, CareCredit. And to my listeners out there, be brave, embrace change, and treat yourself with compassion.